Talking about the bears of the Ice Age. Before we get into that, I would like to say we're open 7 days a week, 6 days from 9:30 to 5, and 1 day on Sunday from 1 to 5. So feel free to come on in and get a look at some of the stuff. Another thing is on October 29th, we have what we are calling a prehistoric painting night, where we are 3D printing a prehistoric animal. And there are 20 spots available for this workshop where you'll get to come in and paint it with a little bit of help from Headwaters Science Center staff. So, today we're going to be talking about bears of the Ice Age. So we're going to focus on two main species. One is the short-faced bear, and the other is the cave bear. So, the short-faced bear lived in North America, and it was characterized pretty well by having a very kind of snubbed face, very short snout, and it is often cited as having these very long legs, which it did have very long legs for a bear, but mostly it's sort of an optical illusion based on body proportion. It actually had a very kind of short body, which made the legs look even longer. Now, it was probably one of the largest bears to ever live, if not the largest bear to ever live, at about 13 feet tall if it stood on its hind legs, and weighing over a ton, which is very heavy for a bear. Now, the other thing about it is it lived about from 800,000 years ago to just about 11,000 years ago. And we think it was mostly a scavenger and took advantage of the fact that it was bigger than any of the carnivores in its environment, so that if someone made a kill, this ton-weighing bear could just walk up and just be like, this is mine now. And that is kind of a thing that even to this day we'll see bears do a lot, is bears will basically push predators off their own kills, because what are they going to do? It's a bear. Now, the other thing is the short-faced bear is not related to bears like the black bear or the brown bear or the polar bear. Its actual closest relative is a bear in South America, which is the only South American bear, called the spectacled bear, which is a small, mostly herbivorous bear. And they are really adorable. If you ever get a chance, look them up. But the thing that we think with the short-faced bears, it was a big scavenger and omnivore, and it went extinct probably because of a mix of climate change and humans arriving in North America and influencing its food sources, not so much hunting it directly. So there wasn't a huge amount of overlap with the short-faced bear and humanity. Very different from our second bear today, which is kind of the one I'm more interested in. So this is what we typically call the cave bear. So they lived from about 250,000 years ago to 24,000 years ago. And they are from Europe and Asia. And they are probably one of the most depicted animals in cave art. Everything from small carvings to paintings. Behind me is my very bad rendition of what are called the Red Bears in Chauvet Cave, France. And there are also small carvings you'll often find with human burials that look something like this. We can wheel in the camera there. And they will often carve these out of soapstone or bone. And you'll find these in burials of early humans. So the cave bear stood about 11.5 feet tall at the largest, and weighed anywhere from 770 pounds to just over 1,300 pounds, which is nothing to sneeze at for size of a bear. I know we just talked about the bear that weighed like a ton. The other thing is, at high extremes of one specimen, they do think weighed about as much as a short-faced bear, but that was an exceptional animal. And these animals were mostly built like a brown bear. It was a big, kind of shaggier, bigger-headed brown bear. And they were a lot more of a generalist from what we can tell, with wear patterns on their teeth and such. And their modern relatives would be the brown bear family, so that's stuff like the modern grizzly bear and actually the polar bear. Now, these bears were depicted a lot in art, and not just by Homo sapiens, but also by Neanderthal. There is a cave called Drakenloch in Switzerland with numerous cave bear skulls ritually placed around places like the exit, where they have a ring of about 6 bear skulls facing out of the cave. Inside the cave, in little nooks and crannies, they placed other bear skulls where bear skulls would not naturally be found. And there was a burial of multiple bear skulls of the cave bear, where they placed 6 cave bear skulls in a burial, which is normally a type of treatment they would have done for a human. And these bear skulls were actually found buried next to a person. And it's something that I really like to talk about with these, is that bears probably have always held a lot of cultural significance to people. Just because if you think about it, wherever you go, if you're exploring a new place, so we're omnivores, we need to know what to eat a little bit more. We can eat roughly a similar diet to a bear. So early people might have looked for food sources by looking at, oh, what's the bear eat? But the other thing is that bears are a big animal, and they stick out in their ecosystems. And also they often go into hibernation each year, which is a kind of a big process, which if you're living as a hunter-gatherer, you would notice. Like, oh man, 3 months out of the year, we don't see bears. Where'd they go? And bears across the world are quite significant culturally. But the other thing about these bears is they are currently extinct. And a lot of Ice Age animals didn't make it in the present. And you'd think with these two giant bears, well, why do we have just like little bears left? Why do we have like brown bears and black bears? And the reason for that is that the smaller bears were probably a lot better suited to survive. They're more generalist. They could handle wider variation in habitat and in food fluctuations. The short-faced bear was thought to go extinct because large mammal herbivores went extinct in North America in a large way 11,000 to 10,000 years ago, meaning for a big scavenger that needs a lot of food, there's simply not a lot left for you. The very same reason why, like I talked about the other week with saber-toothed cats going extinct around that time, the short-faced bear did not do as well either. And the cave bear in Europe, as that ecosystem changed, similarly shifting away from large animals, there wasn't enough meat, which is a component of their diet, to help get them through hibernation, because bears typically pack on huge amounts of weight going into hibernation. In fact, this week was Fat Bear Week, just for you to know, where in an Alaskan state park, I believe, they hold a voting contest on what is the best fat bear in their park. And it's a great example of how much weight bears will pack on. In fact, a lot of the cave bears are found dead in caves where they probably died due to a lack of enough food to get through the winter. But yeah, no, they're an animal that I've always felt is good. And while we don't have any cave bear stuff, we do have some nice specimens of black bear. And just a fun thing to go over is black bear don't actually have to be black. If we can get a shot of the more classic black bear up there. So this is one of the specimens we have, which is kind of what people picture when they picture a black bear. But the bear rug that is on the table with me is also a black bear. And bears can be all sorts of colors. In fact, the best way to identify the modern bears would be actually based on head shape, the ears, and the shoulder. Grizzly bears will have these very tall shoulders, like a big hump on their shoulders, really thick heads, but kind of small ears, whereas black bears like these two, big fluffy ears, kind of these narrower faces, and tend to just be a rounder animal, which is adorable. But yeah, no. Any questions about anything? Yep, so...
No, so the one you have drawn up there, that's the... Which bear is that?
That would be a cave bear.
Okay.
And so a lot of cave art, they would often accentuate the front of the animal. You'll see these animals that we know would have been relatively thinner, like deer, have these exaggerated front ends. And it carried through a lot of times into little carvings.
Oh, yeah.
Which, get that closer to the camera. Where they would carve these with these exceptionally large front ends, and not even like large heads, but just the shoulders are massive. And in this one cave in France, there are a lot of these bears painted with this red sort of dye from the soil in the area. And it's a beautiful cave. And again, bears are probably up there with horses and bison and mammoths for some of the most commonly depicted animals. They were a huge deal to the people at that time, and the cave art has helped us understand a lot about these animals. General shape, we wouldn't have known really about big shoulder hump, and it's helped with other animals. I'm thinking of doing another live stream just on cave art coming up, which should be pretty fun. But yeah, the short-faced bear, another thing I wanted to talk about is, so the scientific name is Arctodus simus. So Arctodus is... you'll notice it's not Ursus. Most bears today, their genus is Ursus, other than the spectacled bear and the panda. So they were not super closely related to a lot of the bears you'd see in North America today. The short-faced bears did really well for a brief time, but the only one left is a little herbivorous one in South America. And being a little bit too specialized can sometimes lead to pretty bad things if you're in a habitat that suddenly changes. The big thing with the cave bear is it was just a little bit too big, so modern brown bears probably were able to outcompete it just by being a little bit smaller, just not needing quite as much food to get through a hibernation. And this is the thing that a lot of times people do look at animals in the past and see these like big versions of like animals we have today, like, and go, well, why isn't that still around? It had to be a little bit better than like the little one, but when you think of it, the little one doesn't need as much food. It's a bit more adaptable, and that can make the difference for survival. And we also have these two skulls. I felt it was good to have the Neanderthal and Homo sapiens skulls with us today, as these people, so back in the past, these were the guys depicting a lot of those bears in art. And it's a good thing. The bear cave with all the skulls actually told us a lot about Neanderthals. It told us that they had a lot more range of symbolic thought than people previously thought, and that they were quite good artists. For a long time, they kind of held the dumb caveman stereotype title, and these guys were anything but dumb. They were quite intelligent people. They were the first people to live successfully in Europe, and they did a very good job of it. Only going extinct a couple thousand years ago, and they are still with us today. Genetically, most people alive today are anywhere from 0.5 to 2% Neanderthal. So if you've done Ancestry.com, that actually will show up. But it's kind of a fun little thing. But yeah, that's kind of all I got for today. Have a